How can one whispered moment destroy a marriage that looked unbreakable? Why did my husband's silence that night turn into a plan so calm it terrified me? What happens when a single careless whisper becomes the reason legal papers land in public? Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible stories. I'm Isola Perrin, and if I could go back to that night, I'd keep my mouth shut. But I didn't. One careless whisper at a rooftop party, while my husband stood beside me, changed everything. People think destruction comes from huge betrayals. Affairs, lies, scandals. Mine started with a laugh that wasn't even funny. I leaned in to say something to Theo, a guy I barely knew, and Noel froze. Just like that. The music kept playing, lights flashing, friends laughing, but he went still, like someone hit pause. I remember feeling powerful for a moment, thinking he was overreacting, thinking I'd remind him that I could still turn heads. I told myself it was harmless, that married people flirt all the time, that confidence wasn't a crime. I didn't realize that silence can be louder than anger, that calm can mean someone's already planning their exit. By the time I noticed the distance, the printer humming at night, the separate mugs on the counter, it was too late. Everyone saw the whisper. No one saw the quiet that followed. And that quiet became the sound of my life unraveling, piece by piece, under the weight of my own ego. I still remember the hum of the rooftop lights that night, the kind of soft buzzing that fills the quiet spaces when music dips between songs. The air smelled like citrus and cheap champagne. I'd spent all afternoon picking the right dress, something bright enough to get noticed, but not so bold that people would call it desperate. Theo noticed, of course. He always noticed. He was the event photographer for our office, the kind of guy who could make a grocery run look cinematic. When he smiled, it was like he knew he was being watched. Noel stood beside me near the balcony railing, one hand resting on his glass, the other in his pocket. He looked like he'd rather be anywhere else. That calm, closed-off posture always irritated me. I used to think it made him mysterious, but that night, it just made him look dull. He said I looked nice before we left, but it was one of those half-hearted compliments you give out of habit. He didn't even look up from his phone. So when Theo leaned over, camera hanging from his shoulder, and whispered that I cleaned up too well for a corporate event, I laughed louder than I needed to. The others in our group turned to look. I felt the warm sting of attention settle on me, and for a second, I loved it. It wasn't the whisper that caused the damage, it was what I did next. I leaned closer to Theo, just slightly, and whispered something back, something meaningless, teasing. But Noel saw the movement. He didn't say anything. He didn't blink. He just froze, glass halfway to his mouth, eyes fixed on me like I'd dropped a secret into the air that only he could hear. Someone called out my name, asking for a photo. I pulled Noel into it out of habit, looping my arm around him, smiling too wide. His body stayed stiff. The flash went off, and I knew right then that he wasn't going to forget that moment. But I brushed it off. Later, I told myself he was being dramatic. I said, every marriage needs a little spark, a little jealousy to keep things alive. When I joined the group by the bar, Theo followed, and I didn't stop him. He ordered drinks for both of us before I could even protest, said something about how he didn't see my husband drinking much. I laughed and told him Noel was the designated thinker, not the drinker. That line got a big laugh from the others. Every time I looked across the room, Noel was standing by the balcony again, eyes on the skyline. He wasn't talking to anyone. He wasn't scrolling through his phone. Just standing there, still. I could feel people watching me, their glances quick and amused, the kind that feed you when you need to feel wanted. I told myself he'd loosen up later, maybe after another drink. But when I went to check on him, he didn't even look at me. I asked if he was okay, and he said quietly, "I'm fine." I hated that answer. It was too calm. I said he could at least pretend to enjoy himself. He said he was trying. His tone wasn't angry, just measured, like he'd already decided not to waste energy. That annoyed me more than if he'd yelled. I told him he was ruining the mood. He said, "You're doing fine without me." I went back to the crowd. The music picked up again, and I lost track of time. People were dancing, laughing, and someone poured shots. Theo leaned in to take a selfie with me, and I let him. The flash lit up our faces, and for a split second, I saw Noel in the background of the photo, motionless, watching. When I got home later, Noel was already there. The lights were low, the kitchen spotless. He was sitting at the table with his laptop open, not looking at me. I said he could at least say something instead of sulking. He said there was nothing to say. I told him he'd embarrassed me by walking out early. He said, "That's interesting," like he was taking notes instead of arguing. That tone chilled me more than any fight ever had. I changed the subject, pretending nothing had happened. Told him Theo complimented the venue lighting, that maybe we could hire him for Christmas photos. Noel said, "Maybe," without looking up. Then I noticed the small blinking light on the printer beside him. It printed a single blank page before he turned it off. I brushed past it, poured a glass of water, and said he couldn't keep punishing me with silence. He said, "I'm not punishing you. I'm processing." I laughed, told him that sounded like something out of a therapy podcast. He said, "Then maybe listen to one." I rolled my eyes and went upstairs. In bed, I scrolled through photos from the night. The one of Theo and me got the most likes. I captioned it "Fun Night with the Team," just to look casual. My sister commented with a string of fire emojis. Tasha wrote, "Girl, you still got it." I smiled, ignoring the small wave of guilt creeping in. When I woke up, Noel was gone. His mug sat rinsed clean beside the sink. Mine was still half full from the night before. The faint smell of printer toner lingered in the air. I checked his phone on the counter. It lit up with a calendar alert. Downtown 11:20. I assumed it was work. I texted him, "You okay?" He didn't reply. That evening, he came home later than usual. I asked where he'd been, and he said, "Just meetings." I tried to sound lighthearted. I said, "Secret mission." He said, "You could say that." I laughed too loudly again, trying to make it sound playful. At dinner, I told him people at work thought he was lucky to have me, that I was still a vibe. He nodded slowly, said, "People think many things." I said he was acting weird. He said he was fine. When I tried to reach for his hand, he moved to clear the plates instead. His touch used to be warm, now it felt absent. I said, "You can't stay mad forever." He said, "I'm not mad." He rinsed his mug, set it on the opposite side of the counter from mine, and walked upstairs. I sat there listening to the faint creak of the steps, the sound of the drawer in the guest room sliding open. Then a soft click. Locked. I told myself I didn't care. I told myself I'd win him back in the morning. But when I looked at the photo on my phone again, the one with Theo leaning close, me laughing, Noel in the background frozen, I finally saw what everyone else must have seen that night. The whisper wasn't just a whisper. It was a mirror, catching everything I didn't want to admit. By Monday, the party was already old news for everyone except me. I walked into the office pretending nothing had happened, even though my stomach twisted when I saw the group chat on my phone. Someone had uploaded a photo from the rooftop, me laughing, Theo leaning close, and Noel in the background, caught mid-blink. The caption read, "Office Royalty." The comments were harmless on the surface, but I could see the undertone. Little emojis. Inside jokes. Someone wrote, "That whisper looks spicy." I put my phone face down and forced a smile as I passed the reception desk. Tasha met me at the coffee machine, grinning. She said people hadn't stopped talking about how confident I'd looked, that it was about time someone loosened up at those dull events. I laughed along, pretending it was funny. But my ears burned when she added that Noel looked like he'd swallowed a lemon. I said he was just tired. She said, tired or done. I brushed it off, told her she watched too many reality shows. By lunch, the whispers felt louder than the music from Friday night. I told myself it didn't matter, that Noel would cool off. He always did. We'd had fights before, silent dinners, long sighs, the usual marriage fatigue. But that night had carved a space between us I couldn't seem to close. When I got home, the living room lights were on. Noel sat at his desk in the corner, headphones in, eyes fixed on his computer. He didn't look up when I came in. I made a joke about him turning into a machine. He didn't react. I leaned over his shoulder and saw a spreadsheet open, columns of numbers, color-coded. I asked what he was working on, and he said, just sorting. I laughed and asked, sorting what? He said, information. Something about the tone made me stop. I said, you mean work stuff? He didn't answer, just clicked another cell and typed something slowly. I rolled my eyes and told him he could at least act normal. He said, I am. Dinner was quiet. I filled the silence with small talk, new client, traffic, the neighbor's dog. He nodded, barely responding. When I mentioned Theo by name, Noel's fork paused mid-air. I told him Theo had asked if we wanted the original photos from the event. He said, keep them. You like that sort of thing. I laughed too loud again, saying he was being ridiculous. He said nothing. Later, when I went to do the dishes, I noticed a new note stuck on the fridge. Just a small sticky with neat handwriting, paper drop 10:45. I asked what it meant. He said, reminder. I asked, for what? He said, personal. I told him he didn't have to be so secretive, and he said, you're one to talk. I barely slept that night. His phone buzzed once around midnight, screen lighting up with a message preview. File uploaded successfully. I turned over, pretending not to see. The next morning, I tried to fix things by making breakfast. Pancakes, even though I knew he didn't like sweet breakfasts. He walked in, glanced at the table, said, you don't have to do that. I said, maybe I want to. He said, since when? We sat in silence, forks scraping against plates. I finally said, you know, you're making this bigger than it is. He looked up. What is it exactly? I said, a joke that got out of hand. That's all. He said, you mean the joke, or you? That one landed harder than I wanted to admit. I told him he should be grateful other men find me interesting. He said, I am. It explains a lot. I left the table furious. I texted Mina, told her Noel was acting impossible. She sent back 3 words. He saw everything. I asked what she meant, but she didn't reply. By afternoon, the whispers from work followed me home. Someone tagged me in another photo, Theo with his arm casually behind me, my head tilted toward him. The comments were worse this time. Couple goals, someone joked. Where's the husband? Another wrote. I untagged myself and locked my phone. I told myself it wasn't my fault people made things up. But the truth is, I liked the attention, the validation. It made me feel seen again. That night, Noel came home later than usual. He walked in quietly, carrying groceries. I tried to sound cheerful, asked if he'd had dinner. He said yes. He unpacked a few items, arranged them neatly in the fridge, and set down a small folder on the counter labeled utilities. I asked what that was for. He said, keeping things organized. I laughed, said, you're turning into an accountant. He said, at least they balance things. We barely spoke for the rest of the night. When I finally broke the silence, I asked if he was ever going to forgive me for the whisper. He said, you think I'm angry? I said, obviously. He said, no, just aware. I didn't understand what that meant, but it sounded like a threat wrapped in calm. Before bed, I checked our reflection in the hallway mirror. 2 figures moving separately through the same space. I told him we couldn't go on like this. He said, you'll manage. The next morning, I noticed something new on his phone again. Meeting, personal, recurring. Every Thursday. I asked if it was work. He said, "Not exactly." Mina called during my lunch break. She asked if Noel had said anything. I told her he was acting like a robot. She said maybe he was trying not to explode. I said she was being dramatic. She said, "Just don't give him more reasons." That evening, I tried to make peace. I dressed up a little, cooked dinner again, even lit candles. Noel came home, nodded politely, and said the table looked nice. I told him he could at least smile. He said, "I'll work on that." During dinner, I brought up therapy as a joke, said we could use a professional referee. He didn't even glance up. "No need," he said. "I'm already documenting." I laughed because I thought he was joking. Then I saw the open folder beside him. Inside were notes, printed screenshots, and a USB tucked neatly in the corner pocket. My heart skipped. I said, "You're really going to hold this over me?" He said, "I'm holding on to facts." After dinner, I went upstairs and texted Tasha, telling her Noel was acting paranoid. She sent back a laughing emoji and said, "He's not built for women like us." I wanted to believe that. I scrolled through old photos of us, Noel smiling, his hand resting on my shoulder. He looked so calm, so steady. It annoyed me that I missed that version of him. When he came up to bed, I pretended to sleep. I heard the faint sound of him unlocking his phone, typing something, then a single beep from the recording app. I stayed still. My throat tightened. The next morning, he was gone again. Another note on the counter, downtown 11:20. My stomach turned. I took a photo of it and sent it to Mina, asked if she thought he was seeing a lawyer. She wrote back, "Maybe. Be smart now." I deleted the message. Later that day at work, Theo sent me a text. "You okay?" I typed, "Yeah, just married life," but didn't send it. Instead, I looked up and saw Noel's photo still framed on my desk. I turned it face down. When I got home that evening, the printer was humming again. A new blank page sat in the tray. The smell of toner filled the air. Upstairs, the guest room door was closed. I pressed my ear against it and heard faint clicking, keyboard strokes, steady and patient. I walked back downstairs, opened a bottle of wine, and told myself I still had control. I poured a glass, looked at my reflection in the kitchen window, and whispered out loud just to hear a sound. "It's fine." But even I didn't believe it anymore. I'm at the restaurant, the one we used to come to every Sunday before life got quiet and predictable. The back booth was ours, the one near the window where the sunlight always hit just right. I picked it because it felt safe, familiar, like no one could accuse me of doing anything reckless here. The table was already set when we arrived, candles flickering lightly, the smell of roasted garlic and fresh bread filling the air. I told myself it was perfect, that a little charm, a little smile, and everything would go back to normal. Noel came in behind me, calm as ever. I could tell immediately he'd noticed the other diners watching, curious glances at us. I told him we were fine, that he didn't need to look so tense. He nodded politely, walked to the table, and placed his coat on the back of his chair. His eyes didn't meet mine. I asked if he wanted water. He said yes, then paused, watching me set my purse down, arranging my napkin with a deliberate smoothness. The waiter approached and asked if we wanted starters. I ordered something light, told him we'd decide on the main course after a bit of conversation. Noel didn't speak. I tried small talk. I said the new menu looked interesting. He said nothing. I laughed lightly, thinking maybe he was trying to teach me patience. I glanced at my phone to distract myself, scrolled through the group chat from Friday. Theo had posted another picture from the party, the same one where I'd leaned close, whispering. Comments had exploded overnight. Emojis, laughing faces, hearts, people speculating. I showed one to Noel, said, "Look, they think I'm fun, confident. Everyone loves this energy." He looked at me finally, his eyes steady and unreadable. He said, "People don't live here." The words hit harder than any fight we'd ever had. I laughed nervously. I said it was harmless, a joke, a moment of confidence. He tilted his head, folded his arms, and said simply, "Harmless can still hurt." I felt my stomach twist. I said, "You're overreacting. It's just a photo, just a party." He didn't answer. He reached into his pocket, pulled out something folded neatly, a few bills left on the table. "Enjoy the evening," he said, and he stood. He didn't wait for my response. He walked out. The waiter hovered awkwardly. I waved him off, said it was fine, that I'd take the meal to go if needed. I sat there, staring at the empty space Noel had left behind. The candles flickered, casting shadows on the table. I could feel the eyes of the other diners on me. I smiled anyway, telling myself I was in control. I tried to replay the night in my head. Maybe he was just stunned. Maybe he needed a moment to calm down. I texted Mina, saying he was being ridiculous. She sent back 3 emojis, a facepalm, a shrug, and a fire symbol. I laughed, felt the tiniest surge of reassurance. Someone had to get me. After that, I went to the restroom to fix my makeup. When I returned, the table was empty. Noel's side of the booth had been cleared, his chair pushed in neatly, napkin folded. I stared, trying to convince myself it didn't matter. My phone buzzed, a message from Tasha. "Did you see what he did?" I typed back, "What now?" She didn't respond. I picked up my glass of water, turned it slowly in my hand. The ice clinked against the glass, loud in the silent restaurant. I told myself it was just a reaction, that he'd come back, that he always did. I wanted to believe it. When the main course came, I barely touched it. I tried scrolling through photos on my phone again, but I kept glancing at the door. I wanted him to walk back in, to sit down, to make this all a misunderstanding, but the door stayed still. I noticed then a small folder placed neatly under the table by the leg where he had been sitting. My heart skipped. I reached for it, lifted it gently, and saw the corner of documents peeking out. I told myself not to look, that it wasn't my business, but I peeked anyway. Inside were prints of the photo from the party, dates and times, little notes scribbled in perfect, precise handwriting. I laughed nervously, telling myself he was just organized, maybe tracking bills or receipts. But the notes weren't mundane. They listed events, times, interactions, everything I'd done over the weekend, including texts, tags, and mentions online. I felt a wave of panic rising. I tried to calm myself, telling myself he was just taking notes, just making a record. I told myself I could handle it, that it wasn't serious. But my fingers trembled as I touched the paper. I put the folder back under the table, trying to act casual as the waiter approached again. I asked for the check. He left it on the table. I fumbled with my card, thinking about what I'd just seen. I told myself it didn't matter, that he'd calm down eventually. But deep inside, I knew this wasn't normal. I walked out into the sunlight, feeling the heat on my skin, trying to convince myself I was fine. I texted Theo, telling him I'd see him at the office. His reply was quick. "Everything okay?" I typed back, "Yeah, just fine." I got in the car, tried to start the engine, and noticed a small piece of paper folded neatly under the windshield wiper. I opened it. Just one line. Follow-up, no explanation. I felt a twist in my stomach I couldn't ignore. All the way home, I kept thinking about the dinner, the folder, the note, the way Noel had walked out. I told myself I'd handle it, that I was smart enough to charm my way back. But every time I imagined the scene replaying, I saw his calm face, the precision of his actions, the deliberate way he'd stayed composed while everyone else gawked. By the time I reached the driveway, my hands were sweating. I unlocked the door, stepped inside, and froze. The printer was humming. A blank page slid out slowly. I stared at it. The toner smell filled the air. I knew then this wasn't about anger. This was something else. Noel was upstairs. I could hear the faint tapping of keys. I leaned against the counter, telling myself it was just organizing, just notes. But the sound of the keyboard was methodical, patient, calm. I realized, for the first time, that his quiet was a storm waiting to arrive. I poured myself a glass of wine, trying to pretend I wasn't terrified. I stared at the wall calendar where his small, neat handwriting already marked downtown 9:25. I didn't know what it meant, but I felt my pulse quicken. I sat in the living room, swirling the wine in my glass, pretending I wasn't shaking. The silence upstairs was louder than any argument I'd ever had. I told myself I could still control this, that I was clever enough to charm my way out. But deep down, I knew something had shifted. I didn't sleep that night. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, listening to every creak of the house, every faint beep of his phone. I told myself it was harmless, that I could fix it tomorrow, but I couldn't shake the certainty that he was already planning, already preparing, already calculating, and I had no idea how far he'd go. The first crack in my confidence appeared, and I felt it spreading fast. I didn't know it then, but this was only the beginning. I'm home, and the air feels too still. The quiet presses against me like a weight I can't shake. The lights are warm, soft, but the shadows seem sharper, more defined than usual. I glance at the guest room door, closed. I know he's in there. I can hear the faint tap of his keyboard, methodical, patient. I tell myself it's nothing, he's just organizing, just working. But the sound twists my stomach. Every note, every letter, every tap feels deliberate, as if he's tracking me without me knowing exactly what he's writing down. I try to distract myself. I scroll through social media, check the group chat, and laugh at some memes, trying to appear calm. But every laugh feels forced. My thumb hovers over Theo's latest message. "You okay?" I type back, "Yeah, fine," then delete it. No need for anyone to know how rattled I am. Dinner is quiet. I light candles again, trying to soften the edges of the tension. Noel comes home, carries his coat, places it neatly on the chair without looking at me. I say something casual about the weather. He nods, barely. I try teasing him, say he should loosen up. He says, "I'm already managing." The calmness makes my pulse spike. After dinner, I go to do the dishes. I notice a new sticky note on the fridge. "Bring forms." I ask about it. He says it's personal. I say it's just dishes. He says, "Some things matter more than clean plates." I roll my eyes, laugh, but the words stick. I retreat to the living room. My phone buzzes with notifications. Someone tagged me in the party photo again. I untag myself, heart racing. Then I notice the printer. It hums quietly. I freeze. A blank page comes out slowly. The toner smell fills the air. I pick it up. Nothing written, but I know it's him. The quiet, patient marking of time, of order. I pour myself wine, try to steady my hands. The calendar on the wall catches my eye. Downtown 9:25, written neatly in his small, precise handwriting. I ask Mina in a text if she thinks I overreact. She writes back, "Be careful." My chest tightens. I go upstairs, pretending to rest. I listen. The tapping continues, consistent, calm. I tell myself it's just organization, just logging things, but deep down, I know he's tracking everything. Every word, every social post, every whispered joke. I can feel the distance growing. He sleeps in the guest room now, the blanket folded perfectly on the bed. I reach over, touch the corner of my pillow, feel the emptiness beside me. I tell myself he'll come back, that he'll forgive me, that this is temporary. But the emptiness presses against me. I wake during the night, check my phone, scroll through our group chat. Theo has sent another message. "Still at work?" I stare at it. I don't answer. Instead, I glance at the living room. The printer hums again. A new blank page slides out. I pick it up and smell the toner. My chest tightens. Morning comes. I make breakfast. try to smile. Noel's mug sits on the counter, clean, on the opposite side from mine. I pour my coffee, the scent alone making me nauseous. I ask if he slept well. He says, "As well as I could." I ask if he wants to talk about last night. He shakes his head. I call Mina. I tell her he's impossible. He's acting like a robot. She tells me to be careful, says he's not like before. I hang up, feeling small. I try to leave the house, run errands, anything to distract myself. At the supermarket, I notice a small paper on my windshield. I pick it up, just one word. Follow up. No explanation, nothing else. My pulse spikes. I get inside my car, hands trembling. I tell myself it's nothing, a mistake, maybe someone else left it, but deep down, I know. I return home. The apartment is quiet. I try to watch TV, but the sound of the printer downstairs hums faintly in my ears. I walk slowly, glance at the printer, blank page sitting in the tray. I pick it up. Still blank. I put it down, tell myself I'm imagining things. Dinner again. I light candles. Try to talk. He doesn't respond. When I reach for his hand, he moves to clear the plates. I say, "We can't go on like this." He says, "You'll manage." Afterward, I go upstairs, sit on the bed. The tapping from the guest room continues. I know he's documenting, tracking, making note of everything. I can't see it, but I feel it. Every hum, every tap, every quiet step down the hallway feels deliberate. I tell myself I'm still in control. I pour a glass of wine, swirl it, try to steady myself. But the calm, the precision, the quiet, it's louder than any argument, any fight, any scream I could make. By the time I lie down, the tapping stops. The printer hums again. A single blank page slides out. I stare at it, knowing that it's more than paper. It's a message, a signal, a quiet warning I can't ignore. I tell myself I can charm my way out. I tell myself I'm clever enough to fix this. But deep down, I know he's already planning, already preparing, and I have no idea how far he's willing to go. The quiet isn't over. It's only getting louder. I'm home and the air is heavy again. The same quiet, the same shadows, but now I feel a different tension, one I can't laugh off or post about. The guest room door is closed. I hear the soft tap of the keyboard. Every tap deliberate, measured, silent like a countdown I can't see. I pour myself wine, trying to convince myself it's harmless, that he's just being meticulous, nothing more. But my pulse keeps beating too fast. I pick up my phone and scroll through social media. Theo sent another message, asking if I'm okay. I type fine, delete it, and set the phone down. I shouldn't respond. I know I shouldn't, but I want to. The thought makes my stomach tighten. Noel comes home later. He sets his coat neatly on the chair, doesn't look at me. I try to start conversation, ask about his day. He says, "I managed everything as needed." I tell him he's acting like a robot. He nods, calm, and says, "I prefer accuracy to drama." Dinner is quiet. I light candles again, even though I know he barely notices. I make small talk. He nods or answers with one-word phrases. When I mention the party, he pauses, picks up a folder from the counter, and places it on the table. It's labeled bank. I ask what it is. He says, organizing facts. I try to laugh, say he's taking this too seriously. He doesn't respond. After dinner, I go to do the dishes. The sticky note from last week is still on the fridge. Bring forms. I ask about it. He says, "You'll see." I tell him he's being dramatic. He shakes his head and says, "Call it what you want." Later, I notice a USB taped under the taxes folder. I pick it up, heart racing. I know it's his, and I know it has everything. I try to convince myself it's just receipts, just information. But the idea of him recording everything, watching, tracking, makes my chest tighten. I put it down quickly and walk to the living room. I try to leave the house, run errands, anything to distract myself. At the supermarket, I notice a small note folded under my windshield wiper. I pick it up. Just one word, follow up. No explanation. My stomach drops. I tell myself it's a mistake, but I know better. Back home, the printer hums. A blank page slides out. I pick it up, smell the toner. I tell myself it's nothing, but deep down, I know it's a signal, a quiet warning. That night, I try to sleep, but the tapping from the guest room continues. I tell myself I can handle this, that I'm clever enough, that I'll charm my way back. But every tap, every hum, every click is deliberate, patient. He's already planning, preparing. I have no idea how far he'll go. I wake during the night, pour a glass of wine, stare at the wall calendar. Downtown 9:25, small, precise handwriting. I don't know what it means, but I feel it like a pulse in my chest. The next day, I try to talk to him. I ask if he's mad about the party, about Theo. He shakes his head, calm. I'm not angry, just aware. I tell him he's making things bigger than they are. He doesn't answer. I tell him he can at least pretend to forgive me. He says, I will handle it properly. I freeze at the words. Properly? I ask. He nods once, calm as ever. I don't know what he means, but the certainty in his tone makes my stomach twist. I try to regain control. I text Mina, tell her he's being ridiculous. She writes back, he sounds calm, be smart. I put my phone down, heart racing. Later, at home, I notice the neat alignment of folders on the counter. Archive A, Archive B. I ask what it is. He says, records. I ask what kind. He says, everything you need to know. I laugh nervously, tell him he's overreacting. He doesn't respond. I pour another glass of wine, try to steady my shaking hands. I sit in the living room staring at the printer. Another blank page slides out. I pick it up slowly. The smell of toner fills the air. I tell myself I'm imagining it, but I know I'm not. I go upstairs, try to sleep. The tapping continues from the guest room, methodical, patient, calm. I tell myself I can still charm my way out. I tell myself I can still fix this. But the truth sits heavy in my chest. He's already planning. He's already preparing. I hear the faint beep of his phone on the nightstand, the small glow of the screen under the door. I peek. He's typing, then deleting, then typing again. I catch a glimpse of a thread titled Follow Up. I pour the last of the wine, sit back, and tell myself I can handle this. But deep down, I know the calm isn't surrender, it's preparation. When he comes upstairs, the blanket on the guest bed is folded neatly. I tell myself it's just a habit, but I know it's more. Every action, every note, every blank page, every folder, it's deliberate. I look at him, sitting quietly in the dark hallway, and hear the words again. I will handle it properly. I tell myself it's nothing, that I can still fix this, that I can still charm my way back. But I don't believe it. For the first time, I feel truly powerless. His calm is louder than my panic, his patience sharper than my words, and the next move, I know, will be his. It's been 3 days since he said he'd handle it properly. 3 days of quiet, polite mornings and colder nights. The guest room door stays closed. I tell myself it's work, that whatever he's doing behind that door doesn't matter. But it does. I can feel it. The house feels staged now, his side of the counter empty, his mug always clean, my things carefully untouched. Even the air smells different, like the faint, dry scent of printer toner that never fades. This morning, I noticed something new. His car is gone, but his jacket hangs by the door. The small silver keychain I bought him years ago, a compass, rests on the counter beside his mug. I call his phone. No answer. I tell myself he's just gone early. Maybe another one of his personal meetings. Still, my pulse climbs. Around noon, my phone buzzes. A message from Mina. You should come to the plaza. Now. No explanation, no emoji, nothing. Just that. I call her back, but she doesn't pick up. I stare at the screen, waiting. By 2 o'clock, I'm pacing. I grab my purse, apply lipstick out of habit, and drive downtown. The streets feel too bright. The glass of the buildings catches sunlight like mirrors. I park near the courthouse because it's the only open spot. When I step out, the air feels sharp against my skin. I see Mina standing near the entrance, holding her phone, eyes wide. She waves me over, but she looks uneasy. I ask what's going on. She says, "Just go inside." I laugh nervously. Inside where? She doesn't answer. The lobby is full of people, some waiting on benches, others talking quietly near the security desk. I scan the room and then I see him. Noel, standing near the far window, his posture straight, calm, composed. He's talking to someone in a grey suit. When he turns, his expression doesn't change. He sees me but doesn't flinch. I walk toward him, confused. "What is this?" I ask, my voice lower than I intend. He looks at me, polite but distant. "It's time," he says. "Time for what?" I laugh, but it comes out brittle. He doesn't answer. The man beside him, a clerk maybe, steps forward, holding an envelope. People nearby turn their heads as the man speaks quietly, confirming my name. I nod automatically. Then he hands me the envelope. My fingers feel numb. Inside, the paper is heavy, official, stamped. I skim the first line and freeze. Petition for dissolution of marriage, temporary custody and possession orders pending review. I blink, my mind struggling to process the words. "What is this?" I whisper. Noel says, "It's everything you said you wanted, clarity." I shake my head. "You can't be serious. You're doing this here, in public." He looks at me evenly. "You made everything public first." Mina moves closer, tries to take my arm, but I pull away. I feel heat rising in my face. The lobby feels smaller, the air tighter. "This is ridiculous," I say, louder than I mean to. A few people look over. I clutch the papers like they're something fragile. "You're humiliating yourself," I say. He shakes his head slightly. "No, just closing the record." My throat feels dry. I flip through the documents, pages marked with neat sections, dates, screenshots, transfers. Every detail organized, labeled. My name printed over and over, paired with timestamps, quotes, photos. One is the rooftop whisper, another the post from after. Every line item is something I told myself didn't matter. He doesn't gloat. He doesn't smirk. He just stands there quietly while I read. "You planned this?" I manage to say. He nods once. "You taught me how to stay calm when you wanted a reaction. I learned." The words sting worse than shouting ever could. I laugh again, shaky, desperate. "You can't take Clara from me. You won't win that." He says, "It isn't about winning. It's about stability." For a second, I think I'll scream. Instead, I whisper, "You're cruel." He looks at me with that same stillness. "You called it strength when it was yours." The clerk clears his throat softly. I realize people are watching. The security guard, 2 women by the bench, Mina hovering uncertainly. I want to shout, to tell them it's a mistake, that he's overreacting. I say, "We can talk about this privately." He shakes his head. "You had your public moments. This is mine." He signs one last page the clerk points to, hands over a pen, and steps back. The papers are official now. The clerk nods, offers me a polite, rehearsed smile, and leaves. I stand there, still holding the envelope. "You don't have to do this," I say softly. "I already did," he says. Mina whispers something, but I can't hear her. My pulse is too loud. I stare at the seal on the top of the form, the neat lines of text blurring. I want to tear it up, to make it vanish, but I can't move. Noel adjusts his sleeve, turns toward the exit. "You'll have the details by tomorrow," he says. "That's it?" I ask, disbelief scraping my voice raw. "That's it." He starts walking. The sound of his shoes on the tile floor echoes. I try to follow. but Mina catches my arm gently. "Don't," she says under her breath. "It's done." I pull away, but I don't chase him. The sunlight from the glass doors spills across the lobby, washing everything in white. I blink, and he's outside already, walking across the plaza toward the car. His stride doesn't change, not once. I look down at the papers again. There's a section titled Exhibits. It lists every piece of evidence: images, messages, recordings, timestamps. The last entry, video file, rooftop whisper, 0018 seconds. The moment that started everything, now reduced to a file name. I feel dizzy. I press my hand against the wall to steady myself. Mina guides me to a bench, sits beside me in silence. "He's serious," she says quietly. I don't respond. I can't. My hands shake so hard that the pages rustle. I remember the rooftop, the music, the lights, the way everyone laughed when I leaned in to whisper. I thought I was untouchable. I thought control meant never admitting fault. Now I'm sitting here holding the proof that I lost everything because I couldn't stop performing. The clerk walks past again, nodding politely. The automatic doors slide open and close, letting in the sound of the city, horns, voices, footsteps, but none of it feels real. Mina touches my shoulder. "You should go home," she says. "Home?" I echo. The word feels foreign. Outside, I can see Noel's car pulling away, turning at the corner, disappearing into traffic. The envelope lies open on my lap. I stare at the black letters printed across the top, his name, mine, and the single phrase beneath them: "Final petition filed and served." I tell myself I can still fix this, that it's just a phase, a legal scare, that he'll come back once he cools down. But even as I think it, I know it's a lie. The calm was never anger, it was closure. I fold the papers carefully, not wanting to wrinkle them, though I have no idea why. My reflection in the glass door looks smaller, almost unfamiliar. For the first time, there's no noise left to fill the silence. Only the faint rustle of paper as I close the envelope, the weight of it resting on my knees, and the echo of the whisper that ruined everything.